Hello Python here and welcome to your 18th Python tutorial. In the last video we looked at operations on sets. In this video we'll be looking at if-else in Python. Now Python if-else is part of Python's control flow methods. It is used to execute a code when a certain condition is met. In real life we sometimes have to make a decision based on a condition, like say I'll heat water if the weather is cold. So that means if the weather is not cold, then I am not heating water. Now this also exists in programming, and the if-else method help us to achieve that. We'll be looking at the elif. Now the keyword elif is short for else if in other languages. The elif keyword is Python's way of saying if the previous condition were not true, then I'll try this condition. Then also look at the else. In real life, if the condition based on which you want to do something does not exist, then you may still decide to go ahead irrespective. The else keyword catches anything which isn't caught by the preceding condition. So if none of the conditions above is true, then perform the else. Then we'll look at the shorthand for an if condition. So if you have only one statement to execute, you can put it on the same line as the if statement. Then we also have the if-else shorthand. If you have only one statement to execute, one for if and the other for else, you can put it all on the same line using this shorthand. Then we'll look at nested if, how you can put one if condition in another if condition. And finally, we'll look at the pass statement, which says that I'm creating an if, but I don't want to do anything at the moment. Let's switch over to our code. Now, in this example, we have two variables. A is 100 and then B is 50. So we'll first create an if, a basic if statement. So to create that, I'll just use the keyword if. So if, and I'll say if A is greater than B, then print A is greater than B. And this is a basic if statement. So it prints A is greater than B. Now if I change, I change the sign here. So I say that if A is less, and then it's not going to do anything when I run because the statement evaluated to false. Okay. Now apart from the if, then I'll move on to the if. So I'll move on to the elif. Okay, so as I explained earlier, the elif allows you to execute a statement if the preceding statement is not true. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this same example. So I'll copy this, and I'll paste it here. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to change from greater to less than, so that this will evaluate to false. And now when I run this, so now the first one works, that is for this. Now the elif didn't execute anything because the statement is false. So now I can introduce an elif, and then what I'm going to say is that, so elif, A is greater than B. So I am checking two statements right now. So I'm going to say, so now, good. So here I'm going to say A is less than B, and then here I'm going to say A is greater than B. So in the elif, the first statement is checking if A is less than B, which we know is not true. So it will not execute the code, but we want to introduce another condition to catch it, and so I used A is greater than B. And then over here I'm expecting for it to evaluate. So now when I run, so in the elif, so I'm going to comment this thing out, and I'll run it again. So now in the elif, A is less than B didn't execute because the condition here is false, but A is greater than B executed because the condition here is true. Now, what if I introduce, okay, so now let's move on. Now, I'll move on to the next case, that is the else. Okay, so now I'll copy this code and I'll paste it here. Okay, and what I'll do is that I'll comment this out to control and backslash. Now, what I'll do over here, okay, so now if I run this, the code still runs. So I'm going to introduce, so I'm going to change the greater than to equals to. So that when I run this code, nothing happens because A is greater than B is less than B is false. A is equals to B is also false. So none of this code executes. So I want to check for a third, clause. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to, so I can go ahead and, introduce another if, but I want to just, like terminate writing conditions, and I'll just want to catch it. So I'm just going to say that else. So if I say else, then what I'm trying to say is that if none of the conditions above executes to true or value, then just do this. So else, I'll say print A is, so here I'll change it to A is equals to, okay, because that is what I am checking. Okay, so A is less than and then A is equals to. So none of this is equal. So here I'm going to say A is greater, okay, than B. Okay, A is greater than B. Okay, A is greater than B, which makes sense. Okay, so when I run this code, then indeed A is greater than B. Okay, which makes sense because if A is not less than B and A is not equals to B, then certainly A should be greater than B. Good. So now let's move on. Okay, and then let's try a shorthand. Okay, so I'm going to say if shorthand. Okay, so if shorthand. So let's try an if shorthand. Okay, so now to create an if shorthand, so I'll first create a condition on first, and I'll say if. So to create an if shorthand, I'll first create a condition. I'll say if A is greater, if A is greater than B, okay, then I'll bring a colon here, and then I will put the statement. Okay, so I'll just say print, okay, A is, so print A is greater than B. Okay, and this should work. So I'll just comment this out. Okay, and then when I run, okay, A is greater than B. So this is how you create a basic if shorthand. Now you can also have shorthand for if else. Okay, so unlike the if condition, with the else you are going to have, sort of like two different, scenarios. So the main if and then the else. Okay, so I can say print, with the same example I can say print, okay, so print, and then I would say print A if A is greater than B, else B. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a very simple way. This is how to create a shorthand for if else. Okay, so you can have everything on one line, and then I'll run this. Okay, I'll run this. Okay, so it prints A. I change it to less than, and then I run, then it should print B. Okay, so hope you guys understand that. So if A is greater than B, print the one on the left, else print the one on the right. Good. Okay, so we also have a nested if. Okay, so a nested if. So that basically means having an if-else statement in another if-else statement. So I would try one. I'll just say if A, okay, if A is greater than B, you know, so A is greater than B, and then I will insert another if condition, so like a second, another check. So I'll just say if A is greater than 50. Okay, so for the inner if, I'll say if A is greater than 50, then print A is greater than 50. Then I will move outside and then I will create the code block for the main if. So if A is greater than B above, I'll just say print A is greater than B. Okay, so let me now comment this out and then I'll run my code. Okay, and then it's going to print two statements. A is greater than 50. Okay, for the inner, so it prints the inner or the inserted if, and then it prints the out, the main if, that is this one. Now, just a little caution here. Now, if the main if doesn't satisfy, so I would change it to A is less than B, which is false. When I run this code, okay, notice that nothing happens. Okay, so because the outer, the main if evaluates to false, then anything that you insert will not run. But if the main, okay, if runs, evaluates to true, and even the inserted evaluates to false, it will go ahead and then run the main if statement. So that is one thing that you should take note of. Good. So lastly, we can have a pass. Okay, so a pass is very, very easy. It basically says if A is greater than B, and then instead of putting a code within it, I'll just say pass. So my condition is going to run, my code is going to run, but nothing is going to happen. Okay, because I've just said pass. So pass here means I'm creating my if, but I'm not running any code. So ladies and gentlemen, this is if else in Python for you. See you in the next video. Bye.